Okay. Okay, good morning. Right. Welcome to this joint Audit and Standards Committee. I am Councillor Dave Muller and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. 1. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. 2. That you do not interrupt other speakers. 3. That if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. And 4. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph and broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'd now like to make some introductions. The officers attending the meeting today are Jane Kennedy, the Corporate Manager for Policy, Performance, Insight, Risk and Improvement. Good morning, Jane. Teresa Fairbairn, Risk Management Lead. Good morning, Teresa. Rebecca Hewitt, Corporate Manager, Finance, Commissioning and Procurement. Good morning, Rebecca. John Snell, Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, Risk and Data Protection. Morning, John. And Mandy, who's our Governance Officer, and Jan Robinson, who is the Deputy Monitoring Officer. Can I move to the agenda, please? Can we have apologies for absence and substitutions, please? Apologies for substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. So we have apologies from Councillor Austin Davis and Councillor John Matheson is substituting.
Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest from members? No? Good. Okay. Item 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of July 2022. These are for accuracy of the minutes only, and could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Eburn and Councillor Hurren. Thank you. I would now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress for you to vote. Chair, that's 5 votes for and 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on, I move on to item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by the public.
None received.
Thank you. And item 6, questions by councillors.
None received.
Thank you very much. Therefore, we move on to item 7, which is the Jack 2136 Risk Management Improvement Report. And I'd like to ask Jane Kennedy, the Corporate Manager, to present that report, please. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. May I myself and Councillor McCraw would like to make a brief introduction, if
Apologies, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, can I also introduce the Leader of Mid-Suffolk District Councillor, Councillor Susie Morley, and the Cabinet Member for Baber is Alistair McCraw. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies.
In April 2021, our external audit partners, TIAA, undertook a review of our strategic risk management arrangements, and they identified some good practice in our risk management framework and made recommendations to improve, including an updated risk management strategy. This report updates members on risk management improvement since responsibility for risk transferred to the Policy, Performance, Insight, Risk and Improvement team in January this year. Following this change, the senior leadership team agreed to adopt a whole systems approach to risk management, known as the Government's Orange Book. This government approach will help us improve the culture and leadership of risk management across the 2 councils.
And And further, in March 2022, the councils also received feedback on our approach to risk management in the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge report. One of their recommendations was to revisit the risk management strategy and bring it to life to ensure a more effective corporate approach to risk, including financial risk. Members of the JASC on the 28th of November, that's today, and the cabinets later on the 9th of January, are being asked to consider the effectiveness of the revised risk management strategy to deliver the appropriate risk management arrangements. The new strategy includes the recommendations made by the TIAA and the LGA, and it embeds the Government Orange Book risk management principles. The strategy is supported by an improvement programme to embed risk across the councils, establishing a positive culture of risk management and continuous improvement. I'd like to hand you on now to the corporate manager, Dr. Jane Kennedy, and then after that onto the lead on the matter of risk management, Teresa Fairbairn. Thank you.
Thank you, members. As Councillor Morley and Councillor McCall said, risk came over to my team in 2022 this year as part of an integration with performance management. The reason why SLT has adopted the Orange Book is because it drives an holistic approach to risk management and enables us to integrate with performance and finance. We are still driving through the process, so we've re-established the risk register on a quarterly basis, going to SLT and to Cabinet as per the Constitution, and we've established a risk management improvement plan and brought in Teresa as our risk management lead, who's driving through risk management improvement. And what you've got in front of you is the paper that sets out what we've been doing through the year so far, and also a draft risk management strategy that takes into account the recommendations of TIA, the LGA, and integrates the Orange Book principles throughout the strategy. Thank you.
Very much, Jane. Do we have any questions for Jane, please? Councillor Eburn, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that introduction. I've got quite a few questions, but I'll just start with a couple. One of the things that's raised is about aligning with the culture, sorry, I'm just trying to find my page. So on bottom of page 20, align the council's culture with risk management framework. I don't get a sense how that's going to be done, and equally within that, what's the kind of structure in terms of the team and how that sits in the organisation? Do you want me to just leave it there for the minute? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the structure of the team, my team is two policy and strategy leads, performance lead, risk lead, a continuous improvement lead, and then people sitting underneath those leads. What we're doing at the moment and what Teresa's put into place and can talk to you about is a risk management improvement plan, and as part of that we've set up directorate level risk management conversations and are working with service managers, corporate managers to help them to understand what risk is versus what issues are, and to establish risk management practices throughout all levels of the organisation. And we'll also set up a risk management fora so that we can understand and support each other through the Suffolk system in terms of risk management. Teresa, would you want to say anything more about culture?
Thank you. I have met with most of the service areas now. They're all using a new risk template which aligns to the Orange Book and the tier recommendations. Almost all of those service areas have migrated into the new template now, We're also going through an upskilling programme as well to get everybody at a certain level in terms of knowledge and ability, and there will be educational resources that are available for everyone that will be tailored to need, roles and preferred learning styles as well. Risk is going to be embedded into employee performance, and further work is in progress to meaningfully integrate risk into reporting alongside our finance and KPIs. So all of those efforts will drive a culture of positive risk management across the councils, and Baber and Mid Suffolk have also been instrumental in setting up a risk management forum which includes Suffolk County Council, East Suffolk District Council, West Suffolk District Council and Ipswich Borough Council to discuss horizon scanning, current risk thinking.
Sorry, Chair, sorry to interrupt, but we've got a problem with the live stream at the moment, so if we could just pause for a minute. Sorry to cut you off mid-flow.
Okay.
We're still live. Oh, the computer's just gone.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Okay. Sorry, Jane.
So, as I said, we've set up this forum with the other Suffolk councils to discuss horizon scanning, current risk thinking and support one another in achieving best practice. And Baber and Mid Suffolk are also now represented through membership of Alarm, which is a professional membership association supporting risk management professionals across public services.
Thanks. Thank you for that. And further on in the report, bottom page 33, refers to members, all elected members and staff members proactively identify risks and so on and so forth. So I don't have, what's the plan for members or to ensure that all members of the council understand responsibilities as far as risk is concerned? Thank you.
So as part of the education and training, there will be training options for members through the LGA, and obviously I'm very happy to run bespoke risk management workshops and answer any questions and support as necessary.
If I can just follow up to that, so what we're planning to do post-election in May is to ensure that Jazz and Cabinet particularly have responsibility, people have direct responsibility for members for risk, are fully trained on risk management as part of the induction process, and all members have some training as part of risk management through the members briefing process. I'm working with IFTI at the moment and through Jan to put that in as part of the induction plan.
Thank you, Chair. Then the other area is on so page 26 when we talk about the companies and the district councils holding companies and the saying that the governance process and responsibilities of risk and so on and so forth. Where do we see that? We don't, there isn't any, as far as I'm aware, that's contained within the companies, and my concern is that we don't, it's just a one-liner in this report. And obviously that's where we're doing new work, we're using there's large sums of money involved, et cetera, et cetera. So where is it documented? Why don't we see this? Is there a separate report that's going to come here? If you could just answer those for me, thanks.
I think in terms of a separate report that comes here, we could introduce that, because I think that would be quite a good idea. All the companies do have separate risk registers, so the 5 companies, and there's an overall risk meeting across the 5 on a quarterly basis that we attend and give advice on risk to. So the cabinet members responsible for the companies sit on that group along with Emily ATAC. but there's no reason why we can't bring more on the company's risk arrangements.
Sorry, Chair, my last point, and I'm sure someone else has got some, that on page 27, it talks about an event that could interfere with the council's business model, but it's not kind of clear from this what we mean by business model, because again, for me, that's absolutely everything the council is doing, but I'm not quite sure what that's meaning, and if we're including, again, all of the companies and everything within that. So if you could just sort of explain that for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's no problem. So we're talking now about business continuity. So events like cyber attack, fire, flood, those sort of events. So making sure that our business continuity arrangements are picked up in the strategic risk register and the service risk registers as well. And we've started to do work. Teresa's had a conversation just last week about business continuity arrangements and the integration with risk management. So that's about that.
Thanks very much. No, I just wanted to say that I think, you know, as you said, you thought it was a good idea, Chair. If we, I think also if with the more of a culture of looking at risk management that's been introduced as, you know, as has been recommended to the council, I think one, it's great that we're actually doing all that, and it's good to see, you know, that we've got people here now that are going to be responsible and help us achieve that. But equally, you know, if we are being responsible for it, we need to actually see the entire risk picture for the councils, and so to have a report on the companies and the risk involved with that, I think we all need to be clear what the risks are to the council. So I think that would be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I think that would be very.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Chair, that's 7 votes for, so that's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, I'd now like to move on to agenda item number 8, which is JAC 2137, and I would now like to invite Jan Robinson, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, to present the report, please. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to say too much. This is the standard report for the past year, and councillors can see the detailed breakdown of the code of conduct complaints that we received. Obviously, we can't go into the detail specifically, but that gives you a flavour, really, of what we're dealing with, and happy to take any questions.
Jan, Councillor Caston.
One thing that stood out from this was the issue of a formal warning for a councillor on non-disclosure of interest. I know you can't really talk about the exact detail of that, but is a formal warning adequate? Do we take that far enough for non-disclosure of interest?
So non-disclosable interest is not a criminal offence, it's the pecuniary interest which is the criminal offence. So if it was a formal warning for a pecuniary interest, it would be the police actually detailing them and cautioning people. But for non-registrable interest, we can only send a formal letter saying, actually, if you progress, we are going to take it further and you will be in breach of the code of conduct. So they will get a formal letter. But as I say, it is the difference between, and with the new code of conduct as well, with other registrable interest and non-registrable interest, as I say, neither of those are criminal. So it is down to the monitoring officer to do what they can with the sanctions that they have available to them, and a formal warning is what we would do, and recommend probably further training on code of conduct.
It's just in this, it just says an interest. If that could say non-pecuniary,
yeah, okay.
that would be really helpful. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, you've explained it really well.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the Joint Standards Board, which we share with these two councils, with the County Council. So I was just interested to explore with what the officer said. At what point does that escalate to something that we're going to take to the board that I'm a member of?
So with the Joint Standards Subcommittee, we have the monitoring officer has available to them the ability to take a case where it's so serious that we want councillors to actually look at it and to decide what sanctions, or the other case is when we give a sanction to a councillor, they don't undertake that sanction, because if you remember, there are only recommendations that we can give, and if councillors refuse to do it, the next step is to take them to Joint Standards Subcommittee. And councillor, I think you've been a party to a few where they haven't undertaken the sanctions imposed by the monitoring officer.
I see. So it's your monitoring officer judgment of seriousness, but also of
non-compliance
with the monitoring officer recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah, good understanding.
Do you have the ability to take that into an independent investigation?
So we do. So when, as I say, with depending on the serious nature of the complaint, and hopefully most of them are not that serious that we have to, but where there's serious allegations, we can appoint an independent investigation, and indeed we have done so in the past where the allegations have been so great that you just want somebody independent completely to look at it, and that's as well as the independent persons. So the independent person would also be involved in actually looking at it to decide whether it does go to independent investigation, and it's not just the monitoring officer thinking, it's the balance and checks really to stop us sort of, getting too carried away, if you like. But then once the investigator has come back with their findings, it then also goes back to a new independent person for them to have a look at and say, actually, I'm looking at that, and it sort of regulates it a bit. So they can look at it and say, yeah, actually, I'm in agreement with it, or I think it's too harsh or too lenient. So there's sort of checks and balances along the way that we can put in. But yes, we do use an independent investigators, and we do use our IPs.
No? Okay. Well, the recommendation is that the Code of Conduct complaints monitoring information obtained in paper Jack 22, 21, 37 be noted. So we don't actually need to vote on that particular paper. Moving on to agenda item number 9. This is Jack 21, 38. And I'd like to introduce Rebecca Hewitt, Corporate Manager for Finance, Commissioning and Procurement, to talk about the report, please. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the position for the first 6 months of the financial year 2022-23. It provides details of performance, effects of decisions taken during that period, and compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Policy. The report explains the factors affecting the strategy and activities, including the regulatory framework, economic conditions, interest rate, and liquidity risk. The economic backdrop during the April to September period continued to be characterised by high oil, gas, and commodity prices, ongoing high inflation, and its impact on customers' cost of living. No imminent end in sight to the Russia-Ukraine hostilities and its associated impact on the supply chain, and in addition, China's zero-COVID policy. Interest rates have climbed, with the bank rate increasing from 0.75% in March to 2.25% by the end of September. The Bank of England has since increased it further to 3% in November, with the majority of the committee judging that further increases may still be required. More specifically for our two councils, for both councils, banking activities undertaken were within the daily bank account limits. Each council has reduced its debt, Baber by 7.3 million and Mid Suffolk by 7 million. All investment activities undertaken were in accordance with the approved counterparty list. The council's investment activities, including average returns, can be found at Appendix C of the report. The council's pooled funds, excluding the CCLA, have experienced a drop in valuation this half of the year, but an increase in the rate of return compared to 21-22. Both councils are compliant with the upper limits for interest rate exposure. The investment activity undertaken for the half year was done so in priority order of security and liquidity over yield as prescribed in the Treasury Management Strategy. I'm now happy to take any questions from members on this report.
Yeah, inevitably I ask, how are we doing in looking at the, let's say, the consistency of our Treasury management with our climate change 2030 net zero objective?
Thank you. We are having ongoing discussions with our advisors about any new investment opportunities, but as decided previously, we'll need to wait until our investments are at a position where we can trade them, as they are currently still, the value is still less than our original investment on those.
Yes, so you're saying that at the moment we're showing losses which we would crystallise if we shifted out of fossil fuels, basically.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little surprising that we're still showing losses when the oil and gas companies are showing astronomical profits. How's that so? I would have thought they'd been going up, not down. Or is that compared to historical purchase prices of the investments?
I don't have that detail with me, I'm afraid, but I will have to go away and have a look at that. But it will depend on the makeup of the fund. So each of the funds has a wide spread of investments in lots of different types of investments and shares. So I would have to go and have a look at the exact makeup of that fund to see where those losses have come.
Thank you very much. In Table 4, Treasury Investment Position, there's other pooled funds as a title in there. Could you just give me a... Oh, sorry. Page 63. I'll give you time to find out where I am. So, other pooled funds, you can just talk a bit about what that is, please?
Yes, sure, thank you. That is the pooled fund portfolio. So that's the Schroders Fund, the UBS, the CCLA, and the 91 Investec Investment Fund, as well as the Funding Circle. So that is that collection, that 11 million is that collection of pooled funds. The banks and building societies is basically what we have in the council's current accounts, and then money market funds are our day-to-day cash investments to sort of balance our cash flow.
Yeah, oh, okay, so that, yeah, they're all together in the paper, so yeah, that's nice and easy, thank you. And in table 5 on page 65, investment benchmarking, it talks about bail-in exposure. There is a bit about it, I know, in 1.12 on the next page, but you could just explain to me what that means, the 99% bail-in exposure, and whether that's good or bad. I'm struggling with it, I'm sorry.
Okay, yes, sure. I'm afraid to say I'll have to take that one away and get some more advice from our advisors on that one, but I'll come back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I too was going to ask about the bail-in exposure, because to me that says we've got a high bail-in exposure, and I wanted to know why we're doing that and why we've got a strategy of that. So that's if Rebecca's going to come back to us on that, then that would be good. But I didn't think that fitted with our more cautious approach. My second question was on that same page, page 66, the 1.16, this statutory override issue. And I just wanted to know if you've got any more information on that, as in what it, with the current consultation, what impact that might have on the pooled funds, the CCLAs, the Schroders and so on, and when can we, and at the moment, as the consultation is, I don't know when it finishes or the decision's going to be, but if it's suggested that it increases in those, the value goes into a reserve, when then could we use those reserves to take that? How long do you have to keep them in the reserve, and when can you use it? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. We have not yet had the outcome of that consultation, so they're still working through all of that. In terms of what that means for our paper valuation losses that we have at the moment, we would have to work that through, but I would usually in these instances we might see some kind of mitigation for those that are already on the books. In terms of reserve movements going forward, the idea would be that we would put any increases into reserves to mitigate against future losses. Again, we will have to see what the outcome of that consultation is as to further guidance on what they expect us to do with those.
So we don't know, so is the consultation still open or is it finished?
The consultation is finished, but they have not yet published the outcome.
Okay. Could I ask then, Chair, that when the response is received, that we just get a note saying what the outcome is, because in terms of whether we'll need to put funds into reserves and so on. And thanks. And can I ask a second question? On page 72, we've got a table for I don't know what they're calling that, trading companies' activity. On all the other tables in the report, we show what the initial investment has been. So you can but whereas on this table, all you've got is movements of the last few years, and I was wondering if we can actually ensure that we show the initial investment, because otherwise it doesn't provide a complete picture. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I can take that away, and we'll look to include that in future.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Caston, please.
So the next page from where we were, table 9, page 73, investment limits. It seems that we over-invested in Lloyds Bank. Is the we went over our set investment limit, and we've not complied there. Could you talk a bit about that and what's happened, whether it's been put right, and have there been any penalties of any kind through doing that?
Yes, sorry, which page was that?
Let me just... 73, and we've got Table 9 investment limits, and then when we go on to Mid-Suffolk, the top box on there, Lloyds Bank, we've got a investment limit of 2 million, and we've gone to 2.5, which I assume is the reason why that's triggered the non-compliance. I don't think this is a serious issue at all, but I'd just like to hear a bit more about it.
Yes, certainly. And I've just noticed that is potentially inconsistent with the text underneath, so I'll take that away and look at that with the team as well. But usually when that happens, it will be a late income that we weren't expecting, and that will be our Lloyds Bank, that's our current account that the council's use, so there's no penalty for that. It's purely there as a risk management tool to make sure that we're not holding too much in one place and that we're not losing out on interest income by having too much sitting in that account. So there was no penalties and no implications for that.
So yeah, purely an exposure, the risk management limit, and there's been no penalty at all.
No, it hasn't.
No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Cass, and that was the very question I was going to raise myself, actually. So thank you for raising that as well. Okay, we'll now move into debate. We'll wait for Councillor Matheson to come back. He did mention that he wished to raise something in debate. So let him come back to do that. Do any other members wish to start off the debate until Councillor Matheson returns to the chamber? Councillor Eburn, thank you.
It's not really debate, Chair. It's just some of the report. It's quite a complex report, and there's lots of different things in it. But it feels that somehow, sorry, I'm smiling, Rebecca, that some things are kind of repeated several times, and other things aren't. And I'm just kind of, I find myself kind of shifting about back and forth, and I just wondered if we can just have a look at, and pull out some of the key things. And I've written notes saying, should be in main report or whatever, so that the key highlights come out. But also, so that's just a sort of technical, not really a debate form. And then I just feel that some of the things that we've raised here have got slightly hidden a bit. So like the sort of thing about the bail-in or the override, and whereas I would expect those to be sort of pulled out in the up front, as it were. But generally, I appreciate it's a complex area, and I know the officers work really hard to pull this together. So I'm not, it's just to make things easier for us.
So I can't remember, it must have been the October one or the September one. I definitely remember that we mentioned that, because I know that Rebecca sent me a report and I did mention that. So we were actually aware of that, and thank you again for raising that question on that. I'd like now to move into debate, and Councillor Matheson, I know you wish to raise something in debate that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think the what I'm looking for really is that our Treasury management strategy is shifting to that complete consistency with 2030. It's interesting that the County Pension Committee apparently last week there was an increased recognition of the need. That the strategy was not consistent with net zero 2030, and that therefore the officers of that committee would be bringing forward changes to strategy to go in that direction, so that there was a plan ahead that would lead to achieving 2030 in regard of the investments of the pension fund, which of course are enormous, and far more than we've got here. But nevertheless, the same point about consistency applies, I think. And yes, I think that's the key. Oh yes, there was the second point really was that I think Councillor Caston, was it? No, not Councillor Eburn, raised the question that the baseline was different for the companies of where we were comparing with the previous year, whereas when you answered my question about the fact that we hadn't taken any steps recently because we would show losses that would crystallise. I think really my point is that at some point we need to make a judgment that the investments in oil and gas are historically high, even though they might not be as good as they were when we bought them, and that if inevitably they're going to go down, and the usual phrase is stranded assets. If you've probably heard that phrase, that if their balance sheets are based on a lot of oil and gas that's in the ground, and the United Nations is saying, and the Council has resolved a couple of years ago similarly, that we need to do a lot about that, then we need to be bringing forward that judgment at some point. Say, well, we're going to take £500,000 hit on our balance sheet in this next financial year if we get rid of this, but we ought to do it now rather than leaving it, because if we leave it for another year we might be showing £1 million or £1.5 million loss on our balance sheet. And so, see, what I'm arguing is that we need to move to that judgment, because, you know, ultimately the loss is there, and if the loss is going to get bigger rather than smaller, then there's all the more reason to actually get on with it, in keeping with our council net zero objective. Thank you.
Rebecca's noted that. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. Councillor Caston, you had debate.
I might be able to help with that a little bit. The reason why we're not seeing a big change in the fund's value because of the oil and gas going up is because it's a very small part of it. There's only, from last time I looked, I was trying to get it up now, but I didn't quite get it up in time. Last time I looked, it was only a very small part of the Schroeder Fund that was in oil and gas. It was, I'm struggling to think that it was more than double figures in percentage points. So none of the other funds are invested even to a level where it's reportable. So they'll be made of other accounts that might have oil and gas as part of their investment. So by that time it's very small. So the actual amount in our investments that's in oil and gas is a very, very small amount. Once you put all the funds together, you take that one investment, which I think is beyond petroleum or whatever. By the time you've spread that across it, it's a really small part, so it would make very little difference. But I still do think these investments are doing all right considering the current climate. There's not really any place that money's been in the last, in this last couple of months, 2 or 3 months, that hasn't lost a lot of book cost. and they did respond to the improvement in the market very quickly and got back up to where they'd been bought. So yeah, I hope that's gone some way to explaining it. My guess would be it is the oil and gas investment in our funds is probably around 2%, if that. I wouldn't expect it to be any more. But obviously it'd be very hard to work that out because you'd have to look at each individual equity fund and everything that's involved in there and see what they've got in, and there'd probably be over 1,000. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Egan, please. Thank you, Councillor Caston.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Caston and Councillor Matheson. I think perhaps we could actually understand what that is, because on the thing that I raise every time, well, I didn't today, but I know I am, is at the bottom of page 48, we talk about considering withdrawing from funds, and it, in terms of meeting the environmental, social and governance considerations. And that's not just environmental, it's social as well, but so we don't really get an understanding of, you know, what, you know, CCLA invest in, what Schroders invest in, what UBS invest in. So, and therefore, you know, oil and gas is at one tiny bit of it, but there may be, I mean, there may not be, but there may be something else that we would think, well, actually, that doesn't fit with the council's values. So, you know, and that line there comes up on each report saying, are considering, but there's never any movement on from that. So I think that would be useful to follow up in some form or other. Thank you, Chair.
Is that possible? Yep.
Yes, certainly. So I know we'll be bringing our Treasury strategy for next year back in January, so I can look to incorporate some information on what's invested in as part of each of those funds as part of that, if that would be useful.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I think I might just briefly answer Councillor Caston's point. The pension fund, what they have done in part is, I think they shifted half their funds similar to the Schroder one you were talking about. I can't remember which one it was, but they there were two options available, and one of which was a sort of all share option, and the other one was actually a filtered option, which was called the Climate Aware Fund, which basically had all the same shares in it, except for the ones that were filtered out on grounds of oil and gas and fossil fuel. And so if you actually make that shift, you do crystallise the loss that we're carrying, but at the same time you don't effectively lose anything, but you do get yourselves out of the last bit of fossil fuel, accepting, as you say, that it may not be a huge part of the of that particular fund. But I think that, you know, that 11.2 is good, that we're looking at the ESG reports, and I guess what I'm asking is that we take more action on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Do any other members wish to enter the debate, please? No? Thank you very much for making a note on those, Rebecca. That's much appreciated. Thank you. Right. Well, in view of there's no further debate, I will now go to the vote for this item, and there will be 3 votes for this one. The first vote is for both councils, the second one for Baber members only, and the third one for Mid-Suffolk members only. So the first recommendation, 3.1 on page 45, is that the Treasury management activity for the first 6 months of 22-23, as set out in this report and appendices, be noted. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? That's for both councils. Councillor Caston and Councillor Owen, thank you very much. And we can now go to the electronic vote, which is now open. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. That's 7 votes for.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Recommendation 3.2, this is for Baber Council members only, that it be noted that Baber District Council's Treasury Management activity for the first 6 months of 22-23 was in accordance with the approved Treasury Management strategy, and that the Council has complied with all the Treasury Management indicators for this period. So can I have a proposer and a seconder from Baber members? Councillor Hurren and Councillor Owen. Thank you very much. That vote is now open for you. Thank you.
Chair, that's 2 votes for.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, recommendation 3.3 for Mid Suffolk members only, and that it is to be noted that Mid Suffolk District Council's Treasury Management activity for the first 6 months of 22-23 was in accordance with the approved Treasury Management strategy, and that, except for one occasion when the Council exceeded its daily bank account limit with Lloyds, as mentioned in Appendix C, paragraph 4, the Council has complied with all the Treasury Management indicators for this period. So can I have a proposer and a seconder for Mid Suffolk members, please? Councillor Caston and Councillor Norris. Thank you very much. And that vote is now open. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, that's 5 votes for.
Thank you very much, Mandy. We now move on to agenda item 10, and that's JAC 2139. And I'd like to ask John Snell, as the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, to present his report. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So the purpose of this report that you have in front of you is to inform you of the work undertaken within the Internal Audit Service for the first half year, 2022-23. And it also provides yourselves with a review of the variety of work, the scope, the projects and the corporate activities which are supported through the work of the team. I'd just like to bring across some key messages which I think are important at this stage, just to give you a flavour of what's happening within the audit world and the sort of assurance that we provide across both authorities. It's important to ascertain really that the demand on internal audit services continues in terms of the level of assurance that we supply, the support, the guidance, particularly as the Council still looks to reshape and transform its services. And in line with the Internal Audit Charter, again, just to provide members with that level of assurance, it does cover the areas of work that does cover the public sector internal audit standards, which allows me to produce an annual internal audit report, an opinion at the year end. So the work that we actually undertake covers things like the governance processes, the monitoring arrangements, which is like the management oversight, ethical behaviours, and that's things about gifts and hospitalities, declarations of interest, that sort of work. Information governance, and you'll see within the plan that was earlier provided to you and signed off, is around data quality. So currently we're working very closely with the Director, Sarah Wilcock, and her team around data quality, and also the work that falls under my responsibility around counter-fraud management. Again, a separate report comes to you at year end. So in terms of actually delivering the work, the resources come from existing staff and also the external audit partner. This arrangement continues to work well and allows a direct internal provision plus the commissioning of external skills and a capacity that provides a blend of resources from within the Council and also from our external partner, which is TIA, which has been mentioned earlier in one of the reports. Moving on to Appendix A and the work that's been undertaken. You may recall back in 2021-22, my annual report to this committee, that the planning enforcement received an audit opinion on the control environment of limited assurance. In line with our own internal audit procedures, this audit was followed up earlier this year. Although there were some other issues that we identified resulting in another further follow-up, I'm now pleased to report to members that all the recommendations have been implemented by management, and that audit opinion has now been raised to reasonable assurance. I would also draw members' attention to, again within Appendix A, to the General Ledger Review, which again received an audit opinion of limited assurance, and again in line with our own practices will be followed up shortly early next year, and the results of that follow-up will be reported back to this committee at year end as part of my annual report. The full status of the report excuse me, of this report is detailed in section 5 of Appendix A, together with a summary of all the audits undertaken to date. As well as conducting audit reviews, internal audit have also had significant involvement within the period in a variety of different council activities. This includes leading on the production of the annual governance statement for 21-22, which was presented earlier in this year. Also, my attendance at the Statutory Officers Working Group, which is to provide appropriate professional determination on governance matters as they arrive. Full details of the anti-fraud and corruption work, as I've just mentioned, will be brought to you in March for last year. Until recently, well, I say recently, I was part of the technical management team responsible for managing emerging risks and directing resources, and that was around the COVID, but obviously now, as that's sort of subsiding, my professional insight is only now called upon when it's required. There's a member of my staff which continues to support the Council's business cell, and she provides assurance on the administration of the various business grants announced by central government, and more recently the energy rebate payment. This work includes ensuring that the prescribed criteria in terms of the eligibility is correctly applied and meets with the managing of the risk of fraud, and there are a number of digital assurance tools that we used to highlight those. There are no additional related audit issues that currently need to be brought to your attention at this stage, so I'm happy to take questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Caston and then Councillor...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, I think a lot of it's been dealt with by the officer and explaining it. What I was interested in was the new safeguarding part of the audit. Have we got that in place yet? Because obviously we're right at the end date, and I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about that safeguarding audit and the work that's going on with that, because I think that's a really important. I'm really pleased to see it added in there. I think that that's really good. So if you could talk on that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So, I share your concern in the sense that I think it's very important, not just for officers, but also for members as well, particularly the role that you play out in the districts as well, being aware of the legislation and requirements, particularly reporting things. So this was an audit that was pushed into this year as a result of conversations I've had with one of our directors. So we would be looking at certainly the legislative duty that the councils have, both at officer level and also member level. So we'll be looking to see what training is available to both sets and ensuring that refresher training is adequate. So we've sort of started that audit, and my auditor has spoken to Vicky Mosley, and I know there have been some changes in staff which escalates the risk to make sure there aren't any gaps, but that is in the process at the moment. So hopefully that will be completed, as said, by the end of November. I know that unfortunately it has slipped, and that's a result of one of the two key officers that we wanted to have a conversation with wasn't available at the time, but it will nevertheless be completed ASAP, and Vicky Mosley is acutely aware of the need to actually escalate this up so we can actually report back to this committee.
So when you say we're looking into the management, is that looking at how that filters down to the actual staff on the ground. How do we, because for me safeguarding almost starts with the boots on the ground, the people, you know, that are actually doing work in some aspect. It depends what aspect of safeguarding it is, but is that looking to filter safeguarding training down to staff members that meet with the public and
Absolutely, there's more of a focus. I think, in fairness, what we will do in terms of looking at that training aspect, we'll be looking at the officers responsible for that training and getting it down at grassroots. So even myself, I don't go out very rarely. I don't meet members of the public, but having said that, I still need to have a responsibility that if I do come across a particular incident, I know how to deal with it and who to report it to. So it's for everybody, but more so those frontline officers where there's greater exposure, potentially greater exposure, that we need to have that greater understanding, and particularly how we report to it, not just leave it there on the table and nothing's done about it. So we are acutely aware of what those risks are, but we need to understand what that level of training is, and is it adequate to not only members but also officers.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. On page 85, within the audits conducted on the general ledger section, on page 85, which has already been referred to by the corporate manager for internal audit, it mentions within purpose of audit reconciliations between the host and feeder systems to ensure that posting accuracy and financial integrity are assured. And in the findings, it says reconciliations of the principal control accounts for at the time of testing found to be performed regularly on a timely basis. However, there was no secondary check to ensure their accuracy. And further down, that management have accepted the recommendations and advised that a review of the whole process around these reconciliations will be undertaken, etc. And the opinion on that is limited insurance follow-up to be undertaken during 2022-23. But my question is, as this appears to be sort of fairly important, is there a target date for completion of this work, please? Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so we'll be undertaking that work early next year in the new calendar year, and that's something that I'll be having a conversation with Rebecca and her team to ensure that we actually do the follow-up as promptly as we possibly can. There is a level of assurance, in fact, the reconciliations are being carried out and on a timely basis, but the point we were trying to raise, and I'm sure Rebecca will be able to support me that, is actually having that counter sign-off. So it's okay me doing a reconciliation, for example, but that's just me. I need a secondary signature to check that what I've reconciled is actually accurate. And there's also the element around the Section 151 reports, which are being produced, but we need to have that management oversight. And I know, speaking to Rebecca and Melissa, they've got that in hand, and that's part of the transformational programme within the finance arena that we're actually looking at.
Can I just ask then, you are confident then that this work can be completed in a relatively short period of time?
Oh, yes, I can do, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Eburn, please.
Thank you, Chair. I too was going to ask about general ledger and the timing of that, particularly as we're looking at budgets at the moment, but so thanks for those answers. My other 2 points are on contracts. John, you've mentioned the, again, that's being looked at again in the new year, but I'm not clear because I understood that there was a lot of work going on in contract management and procurement and a particular project over the last, I'm not sure how long, year, 6 months, year, to which somebody was allocated to a separate team or person, whatever, to do that. So I was just a bit concerned that that's not kind of come through into the internal audits. I just wondered if you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So on page 84, I think that's where you're talking around the contract management. So it seems an age ago, so don't quote me on the dates on that, but we had the East of England LGA do some work. They were commissioned to do a piece of work. Then we had the height of COVID, so it was all pushed back, and the report was delayed and delayed. It has since been issued. There had to be a period of embedment before we came along and actually did almost a health check. So that piece of work has actually been done, and the results are there on page 84. To supplement that piece of work, we're also doing another piece of work in Q4 around contract spend, which will tie in with this piece of work that we've just undertaken. This was a consultancy piece of work which we agreed with Catherine Steele at the time, now Melissa, and also working obviously with the C&P team, which obviously sits now under Rebecca. So that work, in terms of the contract management has been undertaken, but we're going to be doing some more work, as I say, in Q4, which is around contract spend, which will tie in with the results and findings of that contract management piece of work.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I've got a second question, if I may, which is on housing. So top of page 87, when looking at council house rent setting, where it says work in progress. So I just wondered whether, what does the, I see the kind of detail there saying, what's, how it is being addressed, whether they're, and what the risks and so on are. But I just wanted to know, does that actually include consideration of external factors, such as inflation and the cost of living and so forth, or is it more of an internal approach? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's more of an actual internal rather than the external factors that are going on. And we've actually just, as you said, it's completed by the end of this month. The draft report's been issued. We're just waiting for management response, but the initial audit opinion that it's come out as reasonable assurance in terms of that council rent setting. And obviously the auditors tier have been in close conversations with Robert Longfoot, who is the corporate manager responsible for that. But no, it was more of an internal piece of work, and having that level of assurance, particularly as Robert's relatively new as the corporate manager, and again, that sort of piece of work was agreed at the beginning of the year.
Yes, you did just mention already the LGA peer review. I was going to ask really whether you felt that the recommendations, and I think we're talking about two peer reviews here. There's the peer review on planning, which was in relation to Mid Suffolk specifically, but also I think that the other more general corporate peer review was across the whole organisation. Whether you felt that those recommendations have been carried through. There was a certain perception in our group that they weren't only been a long time in arriving, but also the degree to which they were actually being implemented.
Okay, that's thank you, Councillor. That's
if that's in there somewhere, I apologise.
No, it's not part of our plan for this year. So we did planning enforcement, but we've not actually done anything on sort of the planning. So part of that planning review, I haven't been called upon to do any audit work to support or provide any degrees of level of assurance on that. So that's something that presumably Tom Barker and the planning team would actually be taking on board and moving that one forwards.
Okay. Not the answer we need, mind.
Thank you very much.
We've been asked, not quite clear where the kind of remit to audit things starts and finishes.
I mean, in terms of the peer review, if you like, there is a programme of work to address those findings. Yes, yeah, and they are being addressed through SLT. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So they will be addressed, and sort of obviously the findings, there's a programme to replicate in terms of what those issues were addressed and how they're going to be addressed moving forward. But that's something that you may need to speak directly with the Director, Tom Barker, for planning.
Questions, please. I'll talk then. Would any member like to debate this paper? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed, John, for your report. Well, this report is for noting only, and the recommendation was that the contents of this internal audit report, supported by Appendix A, be noted. So there's no vote on that particular paper. Moving on to the next one, which is JAC 2140, which is the forward work plan, committee plan. Do we have any comments or questions? Any? Councillor Eburn, please.
Thank you, Chair. I note that in January we've got Statement of Accounts and Auditor's Report for 2020/21. I'm assuming, well, I'm not assuming anything actually. Why is that 2021? Why is that from 18 months ago? And also, I know that in the past we've had issues with the timing of the external auditor's report and so on, and I just wanted a view on that and when we might expect the following years, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. John, are you able to answer that question?
I actually might pass it to my learned colleague who's sitting on my left.
Right, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, John.
Yeah, so we have had some audit delays in both years. The 2020-21 audit started in March this year. They then had to go and finish the NHS audit, so they didn't get that completed. So they are due to come back and complete that audit imminently. And I need to have a conversation with them whether we will be able to come back in January with that signed off or whether it may be delayed further. We've not yet got a date for them to come in and do the 22-23 audit, and I imagine that is going to be into 23-24 before they are able to come in and complete that audit.
Can I come back without saying that? That's just... I was trying to think of a proper word to use other than that's mad. But is there... I presume that all councils are in a similar situation, that there's nothing we can do. We can't kind of, say we won't pay them or not won't pay them, but, we want things to be moved along because, otherwise I think that's, that is a serious issue in terms of, because for all we know, there might be some issues on the accounts. I'm not saying there are, but that we all should be aware of and that we're then gaily carrying through to the following year, but we don't know about it because it's well out, it's well out of date, as it were. So I don't know. I suppose my question is there any pressure we can bear anywhere to get that one, actually get that one in January, and secondly get the 21-22 accounts sooner than these ones are appearing? Thanks.
Yes, we were having conversations with them on timing. Unfortunately, we're in a position where, because they're delayed, the timing is then not helpful for us trying to do budgets at the same time, so that then causes further delays. And, it's been difficult to catch up and get back on the correct cycle. We're not unique in that. It's fairly common, especially among smaller district councils who don't necessarily have the specialist resources to throw out audit and accounts. But yes, we'll keep pushing to get it done.
It's a very important question, actually, so thank you for raising that, Councillor Eburn. Councillor Matheson, please.
Yeah, that is actually quite alarming. I mean, if the council was a company, it had been struck off by now. And I suppose the government has given some sort of dispensation or whatever on it. But it does kind of take me to the question of our various companies' audits. Now they're actually being carried out by separate people, presumably to a more timely timetable. But even there, I seem to remember at least some of those companies are effectively guaranteed, underwritten by letters of comfort or whatever from the council saying, yeah, we'll look after this company because it's ours, although we know it's insolvent at the moment, etc. It seems to be a bit of an uncomfortable area there. I'd like to comment on that. That might be a question rather than debate, but I mean, Rebecca, please.
Yes, thank you. There's probably not too much I can comment on there. I'm not overly familiar with the whole process around their accounts. I do know that the company's accounts are prepared separately and audited separately as well, so we do get those in a timely fashion.
You're not in default on any of those, as far as you know, you know, for lateness.
No, we're not.
Okay. So do we have any other suggestions, comments or amendments to the forward plan at all? No. Well, I'd like to, that concludes the meeting, so thank you very much indeed for attending this morning. The next meeting is currently scheduled for Monday the 30th of January 2023 at 10:30. So I'd like to thank Rebecca, John, Mandy, Jan, Henriette and Alicia and members obviously for this morning's meeting. Thank you all very much. Thank you. The meeting is now closed. Thank you.